Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We have a great episode for you today. I'm going to bring in our host, Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, our guest today is Jim Amorin. He's the author of Generative Shift, Preparing Appraisers for Artificial Intelligence Models like ChatGPT. So Jim was the past CEO of AI, but we're going to be talking about a different AI today. So how are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great. I thank you both for allowing me to be here today. This is going to be fun.
Well, Jim Amorin, thank you for taking the time to be here. I know you're a busy man. Real quick for our listeners, and specifically our listeners on YouTube, we're going to be talking about this today, the Generative Shift. It is a book by Jim Amorin, and I'm going to recommend strongly that you go out and get yourself a copy of this book. I've seen a couple of folks on Facebook posting about it, saying what a good read it is. Jim, tell us a little bit about your history in the industry. I know a lot of people may know you, but some may not. I know you were president of the AI for a while, actually for quite some time. Tell us about your history in the industry.
Yeah, so Jim, I appreciate that. So I started in the appraisal industry my senior year in college. Semi-funny story about that. The instructor was looking for a couple of people to come and work for two firms in town. Two of us went to the front. He hired the pretty girl. He sent me to the other place, and I've been in the appraisal business ever since. So graduated from the other University of Texas, the other UT, I guess I should say, with degrees in finance and in real estate and urban land development, and really have been an appraiser my entire career. Was actively involved with the Appraisal Institute, was president in 2009 and again in 2017, and just finished up a stint as the CEO, and now I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Well, good luck with that. Are you still in Texas, Jim? Are you a Texan by nature, or is that where you were born?
Well, I was born in California, but as I tell all my Texas friends, I got here as fast as I could. So yeah, I'm still in Texas. While I wasn't born here, I consider myself a Texan. That kind of gets into your spirit. And no offense to people in other parts of the country, but the barbecue here is still the best. So.
Well, all right. You just laid down the gauntlet there, Jim. Here's what I'm going to say. Tennessee and Texas have a long history that is one of help and hope, and we've had this long history. And like the first governor of the state of Tennessee was the first president of the Republic of Texas. Davy Crockett and that whole crew went down to fought at the Alamo. Tennessee has a long history with Texas, but I will say this. If I'm eating brisket or beef barbecue, I'm going to Texas. If I'm eating pork barbecue, I'm staying home here in Tennessee.
That's fair enough. I'll say this about barbecue. I've had great barbecue everywhere I've been. It's just all a little bit different.
I love it. Well, let's do this, Jim. Thank you for the intro. I'm going to take a quick second, and we'll hear a shout out from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Need a profitable PDC solution for your clients? Jaro's appraisal management software makes the process faster and easier. With Jaro, you can order standard appraisals, inspections, and hybrids, all on one seamless platform. The software also gives you everything you need to manage new vendors by taking care of background checks and letting you shop from a pre-vetted panel of inspectors with a wide range of credentials. Get started with Jaro today at TryJaro, that's tryjaro.com.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. You're listening to the Buzzcast, and I'm joined today by Jim Amorin. Jim is a lifelong or career-long appraiser, has been actively involved in the industry for several years, president of the Appraisal Institute for 2 terms, not consecutive. So he's been in the business for quite some time. Now, Jim, you've got this new book out, The Generative Shift. First question I have is, I have played around with ChatGPT. I know everybody is saying ChatGPT. What does GPT mean?
Well, it's a bad marketing term standing for generative preformed transformer. And what that means in English, or in Texan, as I would say, is it basically takes information that it collects through its training, millions and millions, and now at this point, billions and billions of pieces of data. And it actually runs a bit of a statistical model in the background. So if you were to type in the sky is, more than likely the next word would be blue. And it uses that type of modeling throughout. So it's great with text, awesome with text, a little more challenged with numbers, but it's getting better. I've seen remarkable change in the last 12 months, and I can't imagine what it's going to look like 12 months from now.
Let me ask you this. So I do not understand, like, to me, ChatGPT is magic. And I know that it's not magic. There's a structure there. I don't want to get too down deep into the weeds, but talk to me about tokens and characters and how that works.
Well, that's a great question, and I'll try and simplify it because that's the only way I know how to speak. A token basically is an element that these models use to do the next thing that it does. And so it breaks up words into tokens. So a complex word like oversimplification might be broken into the word over and simple, or over simplification. And it tells by that, it kind of tells the model what is next and what to expect. These models are very random. That's why when you ask it the same question twice, you'll get a slightly different answer. But I like to say that's very much like you and I having a conversation, Hal, that if you ask me the same question twice, I'm probably going to give you generally the same answer, but it's not going to be rote. And I know a lot of people get concerned when they type something into a model like this and they get a different answer. It's like, oh, it's messed up. But that's actually part of its the joy of it. And it learns as it goes along. A question you ask it today, it'll give you a different response today than it would have 2 years ago, or even 2 weeks ago, or even tomorrow, because it's learning as it goes along.
All right. So not to get, again, too far off in the weeds, but there has been some concern from certain folks, not just appraisers, but people in the world of generative text models of, it is a learning model. It takes in information and it learns based on what it's digesting. Is there a threat? Is there a fear that it ends up being sort of like an Ouroboros and it starts devouring its own tail and coming out with answers that are not based in any form of logic?
Well, yes and no. There's a couple of things I would say about that. Today, there's no doubt that these models will hallucinate. They'll come up with things that it makes up on its own. And while you can ask it to cite its sources, I think as a user, it's very prudent to double check those sources and make sure they're real, because I have seen it make up things. I think a lot of the concern around artificial intelligence today isn't really in the GPT model space, but what they think is going to come next, this thing called artificial general intelligence, where they believe the model will actually be able to think, maybe not feel like a human, but think like a human and kind of eat itself, as you say. And I know Elon Musk and others have raised a lot of concerns about that. Given the rapid rate of change in that space in the last 12 months, I would not be surprised if in the next 12 to 24 months we have some type of artificial general intelligence model that will be unrecognizable to us today. But it will be something that I think can be a great tool, but obviously with that comes great concern.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where anything that is this new and this rapidly improving is exciting, but it's also a little bit terrifying.
Absolutely. And what I would say, Hal, when I first started playing around with this stuff, I was just curious like everybody else. So I kept reading about this in the paper, seeing it on news articles. In fact, I think I might be the sixth podcast that y'all have done that deals with artificial intelligence. So it's obviously in the sphere of people thinking about it today. And but I started to realize it could be a real good partner for me. The way I look at this tool is it's a really, really smart intern, somebody who knows a whole lot about a whole lot of things.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense, benefiting over 10,000 real estate professionals nationwide. Explore our exclusive Appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Jim Amorin, and we've been having a fantastic conversation about artificial intelligence in general, but generative text in specific. Jim, you were saying just before the commercial break, you used one word that I think is critical for us as appraisers to think about, and that is it's a tool. And it's like any other tool. You have to work with the tool and figure out how it's going to work for you. And it seems like you've done a good job of it. You were saying you consider it a really well-informed assistant.
That's right. It's probably the best apprentice that I've ever had, or intern. Really smart, really able to do a lot of things, but something that you need to pay attention to. You need to oversee their work. I don't trust anything that comes out of that model that I'm going to use in a meaningful way in an appraisal unless I double check that. But what's great about it is it gives me a starting point. So, I'm not looking at a blank sheet of paper and going, okay, now what do I do? At least I've got something to work from. And I think in that way, it can be a very useful tool. Like many appraisers, I worry about this being a replacement for us. I think ultimately it's going to be a partnership. Those people who learn how to use this tool and can adapt to it are going to find a way to make it useful in their practice. I'm not a big fan of being an ostrich. I've always been a big fan of being curious and exploring what's happening out there. So I think, my advice to appraisers who are nervous about this is start small, do some simple things, and then kind of build your base from there.
Yeah. And look, here's the thing. Change is very difficult for a lot of people. It's a hard thing to get your head around, the idea of, okay, things are changing. Back in the day when they first came out with the ability to record audio, there were musicians who were saying this is the death of the music world. People will never go to live concerts again because they'll just listen to it in their home. That didn't turn out to be true. It was terrifying for the musicians at the time, but it ended up being a tool that they could use to expand their base of listeners and their base of fans. I don't know how AI at the 5-10 years down the road, I don't know what the impact is, but I am here to say, I think we as appraisers, as you said, Jim, we can't put our heads in the sand and say, this isn't happening. It is. And it behooves us to get our heads around the technology and understand it. Jim, last round of quick questions. How do you see AI changing this industry for appraisers, and how will it play into the valuation modernization paradigm?
Well, I think it's going to help appraisers be more efficient with those things that are rote and routine. I still think the quality of the analysis, the thinking part of it, the part that I hope that's what people are paying us for, will still be in our purview. I really like the idea of the human agency, the part of the appraiser being involved in this as a useful tool. I hope, and my prayer is in the book, is that this sets the stage for folks. It gives them a little bit of something to work with. I imagine people are going to be much more creative than I am, and they're going to find ways to use this tool that I haven't even thought of. You had a guest on one of your earlier podcasts, Bill Waltenbaugh, talking about a GPT that he built where it used the vision capabilities to kind of help. And I like the idea of that. That's a second set of eyes on, I can take a picture of something, upload it to this GPT, and it can find things that maybe I missed. And that alone is a helpful thing, especially as I get a little bit older and maybe my glasses need to be, revised. It helps me see things that I wouldn't. So I think, again, it's going to be a useful tool, Hal, just like a computer was. I mean, I started out in the days of the Green Hornet. There's probably some of your listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, and bravo to them, but a lot of them probably do. And we've come a long ways from there, but we're still needed, right? So I'm hopeful that's where we end up.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. All right, again, for those of you out there in the world watching on YouTube, the Generative Shift, it is available. Where could someone buy this book, Jim?
Just go to Amazon. It's it's like the Walmart of the internet, right? Everything's available on Amazon. So just search for that title. It's available in paperback and in Kindle format.
And I will say, as I said earlier, I have not made it all the way through the book, but just understanding the inner workings of let's just talk about ChatGPT, having a basic primer on how it works, I found really helpful for me. As an appraiser, for those of you out there listening, look, again, please, I beg you, don't put your heads in the sand and say this isn't happening. We're here. Let's learn to deal with it and learn to use the tools that are available to us. And Jim, one last thing before we go to Morrison, this younger set of appraisers coming into the business, do you think they might be able to use this in ways we haven't even thought of?
Yes, no, I think they'll probably be the ones that adapt to it and find the more creative solutions to it. But in teaching over the years, I've also found that more seasoned appraisers are also willing to adapt to new technology, and those who are successful tend to do that at a quicker rate than maybe others.
Absolutely. Jim Amorin, thank you again so much for taking the time to be with us today. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate the absolute wealth of knowledge you have. I would call it institutional knowledge about the industry in general. Thank you for being willing to come on and share your history with us and kind of your insight into the business. Jim Morrison, do we by chance have an anonymous appraiser question?
Yes, we do. So the appraiser asked us, would love some feedback on this. The lender is insisting that the subject is an arm's length transaction, but the subject was not listed in the FMLS, and the purchaser does renovations for the seller from the lender. Per the LOX file, the transaction is arm's length. The borrower knows the seller through business, but there's no material relationship. Both parties have a real estate agent, which is how the property was found. So I guess their question is it or is it not arm's length?
I'm going to take the first stab, and then Jim, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Look, if you're an appraiser, the part of the value that you bring to the table is your ability to research and analyze and draw conclusions. And part of that process is, and I'm going to go back to my old preaching grounds of USPAP uses the word must a grand total of 3 times, and it's always in the same context. An appraiser must collect, verify, and analyze all information necessary for credible assignment results. Just because a sale didn't go through MLS doesn't necessarily preclude it from being arm's length. There may have been a full-throated negotiation going on there. It's up to the appraiser to do the research, then analyze it and make the determination. Jim, thoughts?
Hal, I agree with you. The only thing I would add is if it was exposed to the market, that's another element of market value. So if it was exposed, MLS isn't the only way to expose something to the marketplace. So as long as there was some exposure in there, I would agree. I think it's an arm's length transaction. And frankly, I think that's up to the appraiser to determine, not the lender.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else we need to cover today?
No, Jim Amorin, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to put a link for your book in the comments, so anybody, rather than searching it, will have a link direct for it. But we really appreciate your time today and looking forward to this book.
Well, thank you both, and I hope it's a useful tool, and folks can reach out to me. The contact information for me is easy to find on the internet.
Jim Amorin, thank you again for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it.
And if we don't have anything else for Jim Morrison and Jim Amorin, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.